Hey Virtual High School, we're here to talk about the ACT reading section of the test. So the reading section is the third section of the test. You'll have just had a very long 10-minute break when you come to approach the section. So let's see about the test and another ACT tip of the day. The reading section, third section of the test, has 40 multiple choice questions to answer in 35 minutes. So you're moving very quickly. There are a lot of different approaches that you can take to the reading section of the test, depending on exactly what type of score you want. So come to tutoring to find out more about a specific approach that'll work for you. Let's talk generally what type of approach you're looking at. So the first thing to know is that after the break of the ACT, so after you take your break, the second half of the test, reading and science, we like to call them choose your own adventure tests. So that being said, you should take this test out of order. That's very, very different than the English and math test, which you should take in order. And that's because there are different types of passages, and some of these passages are easier and some of them are difficult. There's also different types of questions, and ACT is adding another question type coming soon that will also involve some charts and graphs, but more on that when it actually comes out. Let's go over some strategies of how you can choose your own adventure for the ACT reading test. So when we say choose your own adventure, we mean that you get to choose the order in which you take the test. However, this should be something that you plan out ahead of time, and you want to think through ahead of time what order is best for you. For example, typically, it is easier to start with the natural science or an informational passage. This passage is factual and it's typically easier and takes less time. We recommend you end with a prose or a literary passage. These passages are typically the most time-consuming. At the very top of the passage, you will see what type it is. Then, when you get there, go straight to the questions. Do not start by reading the full passage. This is a huge waste of time. There is one exception to this rule, and it is down here. And the only exception to this rule is if you are a super fast reader. If you're a fast reader and you can comprehend, then you can ignore that rule. For the rest of us mortals, it is a huge waste of time. Instead, you want to go straight to the questions, and then you want to look for easy questions. The reading section mixes in easy and difficult questions. So an easy question is one that has vocab or a location to find it. So for example, if you see something about a vocabulary question where, what does this word mean? Go to that line that it tells you to read it, figure out what it means. That's going to be an easy question because it's a short question. Remember, on the ACT, it's all about getting as many questions correct in a short amount of time as possible. Other easier questions are location-based questions. So if it says in this line, what is happening, you can go to that specific question in the passage and figure that out without reading the entire passage. Now that you've gotten the easy questions out of the way, you already have a general idea of what is going on in this passage. So now it's time to look for the main idea, whole passage questions that are a little bit more difficult. So some questions that would be a little more difficult would look at one theme of the passage. This is more difficult because you need to read the entire passage in order to get that answer. So you want to save that for the end after you have been able to get to know the passage, or something like the main purpose of the passage. This is going to be more difficult because you're looking at the entire passage as a whole. Also, a good tip for this section is when you are looking at thinking about the theme or the passage or answering a vocabulary question, before you start looking at all of the answers, go ahead and predict the answer in your head. You can even cover up the page or the screen depending on how you're taking the test, but go ahead and predict your answer first, because sometimes you might see an answer that's true, but it isn't the best answer, and we're looking for the best answer here. Okay, to summarize the reading section, you have 40 questions in 35 minutes. You just have to get 22 of those questions correct to get a 21. The reading is a choose your own adventure. So you do not have to take this test in order, but plan out ahead of time how you will take this test. What will your adventure look like? Go straight to the questions and then find your easy questions first. So find those line references. Find the easy questions that ask about vocabulary and save the more difficult ones for the end of the passage. And here is your ACT tip of the day, and it is to walk around and stretch during the break. And even between tests, go ahead and stretch. You can't walk between that, but you can stretch it out. Go ahead and get your blood moving again and just re-energize yourself for the second half of the test. All right, that is it for the ACT reading section. Thank you for listening. If you want more information about the ACT reading section, go to our ACT Canvas course and come to ACT Tutoring.